Hello everyone, I'm EvoWorld. In the evolutionary history of animals, there are always many firsts worth remembering. And in my opinion, the first time vertebrates took to the sky, approximately 228 million years ago during the late Triassic period, is particularly astounding. Who could have imagined that a small fish, wallowing in mud, could soar upwards through 200 million years of evolution and ultimately evolve into the largest creature to ever fly on Earth? Yes. Today we're going to talk about one of the most famous groups of creatures in the entire Mesozoic era, pterosaurs. Pterosaurs are not dinosaurs, but they are closely related to dinosaurs evolutionarily. However, unlike dinosaurs, who were born in forests with abundant food and shelter, the pterosaur family was much more humble. Pterosaur ancestors likely lived in what is equivalent to today's Western Europe. But in that era, Europe was very African, filled with vast deserts and arid grasslands everywhere. To survive, most animals in this land were very small, mostly preying on insects. And the pterosaur ancestors were one of these countless beings. They might have looked somewhat similar to Scleromochlus. To catch scattered flying insects, they had to jump with all their might. They say the children of the poor mature early, but the truth is, if they don't mature early, the children of the poor perish early. Even insects were a scarce resource in the desert. You had to use every possible means to jump high enough, stay airborne long enough, but without consuming too much energy. And the pterosaur ancestors found the most ingenious solution to this problem. They extended their skin membranes to optimize their aerodynamic shape. Thus, slowly, jumping turned into gliding. At this point, they were just one opportunity away from truly flying. And this opportunity didn't make them wait too long. This opportunity, however, was still incredibly brutal. Over 230 million years ago, torrential rain poured down on the deserts of Pangaea. Yes, it was that great rain again, the one that lasted for nearly 2 million years, the Carnian pluvial event. For desert animals, however, the long-awaited rain was not a blessing but rather like opening a gate to hell. The continuous downpour completely transformed their homeland. Towering trees emerged from what was once barren land. But with the forests came all sorts of previously unseen and ferocious predators. Life instantly shifted from difficult mode to hell mode, driven by a belief that they would survive no matter what. The pterosaur ancestors ventured further down the path of perfecting their gliding. Their skin membranes gradually became wider and more complex, equipped with a very precise muscle system that allowed them to skillfully change the membrane's shape. Human airplanes today follow the same principle. Simultaneously, they greatly enhanced their air sac system and chest muscles. This not only made their bodies lighter but also provided sufficiently powerful propulsion for their wings. Unbeknownst to them, gliding transformed into true flight. With the wind's gentle lift, they ascended high into the sky, and pterosaurs were truly born. Currently, the earliest known pterosaur is Prehistoric, discovered in Europe. Its body still retained the terrestrial animal mode, similar to Scleromochlus. However, it already clearly possessed the ability to fly. Prehistoric's forelimbs were twice as long as its hind limbs, and it also had a long, slender ring finger, strong enough to support the flight membrane. This hard-won ability to fly immediately brought immense rewards to pterosaurs. Within the dense, multi-layered forests, vast numbers of insects thrived. Because insects had reigned supreme in the skies for millions of years prior, they had grown plump and robust. There were giant carnivorous locusts over 30 centimeters long and cicadas nearly half a meter across. Even Bear Grylls would salivate at the thought. Although the pterosaur family remained a relatively marginalized group in the Triassic period, with limited species primarily confined to Europe, these pioneers of the sky undoubtedly held immense potential. With their small size and insects as an inexhaustible food source, even if it were the end of the world, the pterosaur family not only safely survived the Triassic-Jurassic extinction event but also experienced an explosive proliferation in the subsequent Jurassic period. Flight bestowed upon them an incredible migratory ability. And the millions of peaceful years in the Jurassic period allowed forests to spread across the globe. To adapt to different environments worldwide, pterosaurs began to undergo a series of extreme modifications. Some were quite peculiar, such as the Anuronathidae, frog-mouthed pterosaurs. Are you sure your appearance isn't just for being cute? More importantly, their bodies gradually shed their original terrestrial animal forms, greatly optimizing their aerodynamic shape. Simultaneously, their bones became lighter, and their heads enlarged to gain stronger sensory and visual capabilities. Pterosaurs, as archosaurs closely related to birds, also retained some traditional abilities, such as constant body temperature and hair-like coverings on their bodies. Contrary to many popular depictions, pterosaurs were indeed hairy. Their hair-like structures were roughly intermediate between simple mammalian body hair and dinosaurian protofeathers, providing excellent insulation and somewhat improving airflow over their body surface. From then on, pterosaurs soared unbound. The world was vast, and they would explore it. Some pterosaurs flew out of their comfort zone, pioneering new ways of life. For instance, Rhamphorhynchus migrated to areas near water, feeding on fish. However, just like their early painful experiences, a sense of crisis remained etched in the pterosaurs' genes. They were perpetually, relentlessly, striving for superior physical capabilities and more ecological niches. Starting in the late Jurassic, a group of pterosaurs with truly perfected flight skills began to rise, the pterodactyloids. These pterosaurs almost completely shed all unnecessary weight. They nearly lost their tails, and many large groups even lost their teeth. Coupled with a streamlined, aerodynamic body, they launched into the air like arrows from a bow, soaring aloft like eternal stars. This unstoppable aerial force propelled the pterosaurian empire to its peak, and pterosaurs' presence reached every corner of the world. Building on their fish-eating habits, primitive Tenechasma evolved comb-like teeth to filter small organisms from the water. The extreme of this evolutionary path was the filter-feeding Pterodaustro. Meanwhile, Sungaripterus developed a shovel-like beak and grinding teeth, specializing in consuming various shellfish. Was this the legendary underwater old flyer? On land, pterosaurs were just as restless. Pteranodon transformed into omnivores, eating everything they could. Even more remarkably, some, like Tapejara, simply became herbivores. Of course, where there are herbivores, there are also carnivores. And Hangara chose to become a scavenger, pursuing carrion. Naturally, what excites ancient mythology enthusiasts the most are the awe-inspiring Azhdarchids, known for their enormous size, capable of preying on small animals and even juvenile dinosaurs. In short, any conceivable aerial lifestyle you can imagine for a flying animal, pterosaurs explored it all in less than 100 million years. The sheer abundance of pterosaur fossils from this period is astonishing. China's Liaoning province alone has yielded over 30 different pterosaur species, leading paleontologists to use every possible pop culture reference for their names. We'll skip over names like Wukongopterus and Duzanopterus, referencing the Monkey King. But then there's Topuxuara leonardii, clearly named by a George R.R. Martin fan. And Crazy Diamond Pterosaur, Sierradactylus atrox, definitely named by a Pink Floyd fan. There's even Ghost Dragon, Mogonopterus. Indeed, around 130 million years ago in the Cretaceous period, pterosaurs were truly at their zenith, seemingly unstoppable across their vast territories, with no challenge capable of diminishing their reign. However, even as pterosaurs dominated, a new power was stirring. Starting in the Jurassic period, a group of dinosaurs called Maniraptorans had been continuously enhancing their feathers. This eventually led to the creation of a new global force, birds. They were like a tiny crack in a vast empire, subtly foreshadowing its collapse. Frankly, the earliest birds were incredibly humble compared to the pterosaurs of their time. But they had at least one significant advantage: bird wings are made of feathers. If a pterosaur's skin wing tore, it was a permanent scar. But if feathers were damaged, they could be replaced at any time. This made feathered wings exceptionally well suited for flying in the narrow and messy environment of the forest canopy. Furthermore, feathers offered greater flexibility for later modifications. It's fair to say that skin wings weren't inherently flawed, but feathered wings were absolutely a built-in advantage. Over roughly 20 million years, birds gradually squeezed out pterosaurs' dominance in the forest canopy. By 120 million years ago, all small and medium-sized insect-eating pterosaurs in the forests had gone extinct. And with this newly thriving environment, birds began to steadily encroach on other pterosaur territories. By the mid-Cretaceous, around 110 million years ago, pterosaur diversity appeared to reach its historical peak. Some truly gigantic aerial rulers emerged. However, a closer look reveals that at this time, small and medium-sized pterosaurs, those with wingspans under 2 meters, were in a complete and utter collapse. As a result, from the late Cretaceous onwards, the pterosaur family, in a broader sense, gave us the distinct impression that they were simply getting bigger. However, being massive means needing more food and a larger, more suitable environment. Once the environment drastically changed, they were doomed. Around 90 million years ago, the pterosaur's vulnerability became a harsh reality. That year, global oceans suffered a major anoxic event, the Turonian extinction event, which we've mentioned before as the furious counterattack that wiped out the ichthyosaurs. Generally, oceanic anoxia has a relatively minor impact on land, so most terrestrial animals at the time weren't significantly affected. However, the Pterosaurian empire hit rock bottom, although pterosaurs didn't go extinct then, and even recovered to some extent afterwards. This event already exposed how incredibly fragile they were in the face of major environmental shifts. After this, only 2 lineages of the vast pterosaur family remained. Some paleontologists like to consider this period the peak of the pterosaur dynasty. After all, it was during this time that, over the next 30 million years, Earth's largest flying creatures were born, the Azhdarchids. With wingspans that could reach 12 meters, a single flap could propel them dozens of kilometers. They truly embodied the phrase, "Their wings were like clouds hanging from the sky, with waters 3,000 li deep beneath them." There were also Nyctosaurus, with incredibly exaggerated head crests and massive bodies. Their appearance was truly like something out of a fantasy dragon. Yet, this wasn't so much a revival as it was a kind of final burst of life. Becoming larger made them even less capable of coping with drastic environmental changes. Exaggerated appendages often signal extreme resource scarcity and increasingly fierce competition within their own kind. Finally, 65 million years ago, a massive asteroid struck Earth, instantly overturning the entire planet's ecosystem. Any animal over 1 meter in size was destined to perish. And with that, pterosaurs concluded their magnificent existence. One could say the pterosaur story began with a passionate, ant-like start. Unfortunately, reality isn't always a joyful adventure. But we can never forget the pterosaurs' desperate flight to the heavens and their grand legend of soaring 90,000 li. That's all for today. Thank you for watching the whole video. Remember to like, comment and subscribe to the channel to support me. Thank you very much.